Hey everybody, welcome back to TSSA Talks. We're here live at the historic Exit Inn in Nashville, Tennessee, one of the best rock clubs. But as I look on the names around the big board over here, we'll show you some pictures, some great names in music history. There's a big poster of Chuck Berry when he played here back in the 60s and 70s. Some of the great comedians of our time. A really great venue. We're really happy they're partnering with us at TSSA with our TSSA Talks series. So thanks to the folks at Exit Inn. Also, big thanks to Jamonn Brady, who's joining us. Jamonn Brady is a director at the Stones River Football Club and a member of our ODP staff here at Tennessee State Soccer Association. Jamonn, as we were finishing up the first part of our chat, we talked about sort of what was one of the pinnacles of your playing career, which was being named the captain, really serving as a captain to your teammates through your high school career.
Yeah.
And as a lot of people do, and we're having more opportunities these days, but a lot of really good players don't decide to go on and play soccer as a varsity part of your job, sport moving on to college. Yes. That was the case for you. Where did you go to college, and sort of tell me about your transition from high school into college and then into your adulthood?
Yeah. Okay. So it's coming out of high school, I had a couple of guys on the team with me my senior year that were named high school All-Americans, and I saw them getting a good bit of accolades and news clippings and things like that. And so I wasn't cast at that level, and I think the highest award I got was maybe an all-district or maybe an all-region or something like that. And when you're playing beside a couple of guys that are getting not just all-state but all-American accolades, I myself thought lesser of myself, and there wasn't anyone really telling me anything other than my parents. And
Mm-hmm.
What do they know, right? As a 17-year-old, I'm only people really cheering for me and telling me I can do it are my parents, and that's what they're supposed to do. So I figured it was time to hang it up at that point. So I did. I mean, we finished my senior season. We actually made it to the state championship game my senior year. Lost to Baylor the year before they transitioned from public school to private school. Still a little stung about that, but made it to that game. Played great memories from that, and it was time to then move on to start becoming an adult, if you will. And so went to UT. Graduated, went to UT because it was close and it was an easy selection. Wasn't really a UT fan before that. Spent some quality years there, in and out of the classroom, and played soccer the whole time. Like intramurals every year, I was in intramurals. Played indoor whenever possible. If a friend reached out about pickup game here or there, I was a part of it. But then graduated, moved here, started a family. Had a little boy when we got here. My wife and I had a little boy, and so still kind of kept ties with all of my friends and our families back in East Tennessee, and would go back periodically from time to time.
Well, you mentioned to me, Jamonn, I think one of the things sort of to wrap up sort of that playing career was, an opportunity one time when you happened to be back home where some of the alumni who played at Oak Ridge were getting together. Tell us a little bit about what happened that day and how that kind of continued to shape your experiences in our game.
Yeah. So I, again, as a kid, looking back at my experience with my coach, didn't really think anything of his actions being malicious or having malicious intent. But there was a time in my early 20s, my wife and I were coming back to East Tennessee for some event. Maybe it was a football game or maybe it was just to visit family. And a really good friend of mine that played on the team back in high school reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town as well. We're actually having an alumni game at the high school. You should come play." And the alumni game was always fun. Coach had the alumni game every year. It was fun as a player to play against old players. So I was really excited about the opportunity to be one of those old players that came back to see how the high school team looked this upcoming year. And so I packed up my boots and we headed back to East Tennessee. And that evening, rolled out to the high school, played some of the old songs that we used to play before pregame to get ready for the game, and rolled up. A lot of people were there. Several of the guys I played high school with, from guys that were seniors when I was a sophomore to guys that were a little bit younger than me, and a lot of camaraderie. Everybody's excited to see me, and I'm excited to see everyone else, and just a genuine great feeling showing up. And as we're starting to warm up, coach comes over and he's like, "Hey, you weren't invited." And if you know anything about me, I'm kind of a smile it off type of person. So I kind of smiled it off and thought he was maybe a bit joking because I hadn't really spoke to him in years. And I, seriously? And he's like, yeah, you're not invited. Like you weren't invited and you can't participate. And so, again, kind of in front of this group of players and now young men that I grew up with, it stung. And so, I kind of had based on my trip on coming to be a part of this. I could have left a little bit later or, whatever. And the embarrassment of it was pretty heavy. Like I didn't really know how to take it at first. And so I walked over to the bench and grabbed my stuff and started to head out. And a lot of the guys weren't around him when he said that. So as I'm walking off, there's a group of them that are like, "Hey, where you going?" And I just put my head down and kept walking, said nothing to him. And so up until then, I'd never really thought about any of his actions when I was a kid as being malicious. I just kind of thought he didn't know how to communicate with me and didn't know how to necessarily deal with a young black kid on his team. I mean,
you were the only.
I was the only one that I know of that played for
in the history from your time growing up in Oak Ridge. You never went and watched a high school soccer game before you were in high school and saw a black player on the team.
No, I did not. And it's one of those things where people would point to. I mean, if there was that guy, people would point to, "You're just like so and so from 10 years ago." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you're that one black dude from 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So I never got that, and I know within the 3 or 4 years before I got there, there definitely wasn't that because I was aware of those players.
Sure.
And so, there's several Hispanic players, and there was, it wasn't that it was just an all-white thing. I think it was just he wasn't familiar with black people in general. And so, again, after that experience, I look back and I go, you know what? There was some level of maliciousness involved in that because why would he just embarrass me in front of everyone, to put it, as mildly as I can?
And in a high school environment, you never have enough support. You never have enough alums that are coming back. You never have enough people in the stands. You would think, from an independent outsider's perspective, that anybody who's going to be a fan of your program and somebody who could proudly represent having been there, you'd want to celebrate that and not be adverse to it.
Yes, and a former captain of yours.
Sure.
So all that kind of stung really bad. So,
as that's happening, Jamonn, you're transitioning your life from, you started a family now. You've got a young family, you've got a wife, you've got a young son. You guys have moved now to the Middle Tennessee community, and you're beginning your career in coaching, which, again, you talk about there's no people who look like you playing. I got to assume there weren't a lot of faces that look like yours that were on the sidelines coaching you, maybe in some of the other sports, but probably not in ours. And yet you've decided to now strike out on your own and make your way as a soccer coach here in Middle Tennessee. Tell me about that transition.
Yeah. So that's absolutely true. I mean, there wasn't my club coach was a Hispanic was a Hispanic coach, and to that tune there's a good bit of that influence within our soccer culture. But yeah, not young black men or older black men involved in it. And so my son, obviously, I'm like, "Hey, I'm gonna throw you out on a soccer field. Like my dad, I'm gonna let you experience all the sports you would like, and I'm gonna let you choose whatever you would like. But obviously, this is one that's gonna be a part of that mix." And so I put him out there and told my wife, I'm just gonna be a parent. I'm gonna watch. I'm not gonna try to relive my high school glory days through my son. And so for the first probably 3 years that he played recreational soccer, that's what I did. The only thing was, I would go and drop him off for practice, and here are these plush, beautiful patches of green grass where people are playing soccer at Rotary Park. And so I would start to bring my ball with me. And so every season, I would be off in a corner somewhere juggling and kicking around, and the coach for the team would eventually say, "Hey, man, like, you know way more about this than I do," and would rope me in as an assistant. And finally, my wife was like, "Hey, you just need to start coaching his teams." And so I transitioned into being the coach versus the reluctant assistant coach. and I started to play there locally as well in their adult league. And so some of the kids that were in the league that my son was in had parents that also played in the adult league. And my son decided to join travel soccer at around the age of 10.
Okay.
Up until then, bounced around to different sports, and I was all about it. But I told him, you can't play travel, you can't play competitive any sport, unless you kind of pull back the reins on the other sports. We can play rec everything until whenever, but if we're going to commit the time and the money and the energy into playing travel anything, then it needs to be the main focus. And so he waited until about 10, played football and other sports, and at about 10 years old, at a rec game, there was a select coach coaching the other team, and came up to him after the game and was like, "You're wasting your talents in rec soccer. You need to play select." And so that's all it took for a 10-year-old to have someone tell them that they're wasting their talents. He was on cloud nine the rest of the weekend, and into competitive soccer we went. And so I thought, great, I can step back again, pass these reins off to a professional coach, and get to watch my son again. Well, the team he tried out for, the coach quit after tryouts. And so the club's scrambling to find a coach. Again, several of those players that were in his age group that are playing travel soccer, their dads are playing adult league. You should coach them. Okay, I'll give it a try. So I came on as an assistant with the director of coaches at Stones River at the time, with the intention of getting licensed and all that good stuff, and becoming the coach of that team, and which I did. And kind of the rest of that saga's history. That was an 01 boys team at Stones River, and I took them until they graduated. But during that time, I still had a career job, and was doing well at the front of it, but we kind of hit that patch of 08 to 2012, and I was in a sales job, and so things kind of got real murky there as far as my future, and I kind of questioned what my purpose was and all those type of things during that time. Am I going to be doing this that I'm doing right now when I'm 55, 60? And I thought, no, there's got to be something different. Again, I'm just getting into competitive soccer, so during that time, I was loving what I was doing. I enjoyed every moment with the boys, and so I thought, let's see if we can try to make something out of this, and kind of dug in and did both until the income from one came within maybe the hemisphere of where the corporate job was, but the impact that's able to be made as a coach was what I was seeking in the sales job that I was in. I got into sales in order to try to make differences in people's lives. And in the job that I was in, I realized that what I sold didn't, and me providing that service made no impact in people's lives. And so it was, not only was it not lucrative, but it was not filling my cup emotionally either. So I transitioned into soccer, and Stones River has been really good to me. They've given me an opportunity to grow. They've given me a path to grow. And so as I stepped back from my career job and then let that go, moved into a director position at the club, and have kind of grown in that, and also found an opportunity in ODP as well, and have loved getting to work with players all over the state.
Well, I think it's really interesting because it's not a path you set yourself out on. You didn't set this as a goal. You didn't say, coming out of high school, hey, I aspire to be X, Y, and Z, and then here's my path. A lot of us think we have a path, and that path often ends up different. But it's, I think, interesting to me the way you start and just the impact on people.
Yes,
is the one thing you said that really resonates with me. There is an opportunity every year, and as you've done this now for a while, your son and some of his teammates from that first team, those guys are starting college this year?
Yes, this year and last year, yep.
So they've moved on, they're adults. You're going to start to get invitations to weddings and, college graduations and, and those things where those impacts are going to continue to be seen and be felt for years to come. And that's awesome. I love that, it becomes a passion that serving and helping and leading and showing people, I even think about, we've talked about in ODP, there's examples where you on the field as a player never saw anybody that looked like you.
Yeah.
But now there are young men of color,
Yes.
who come out and they don't. Everybody doesn't look like you.
Right.
There's still a lot of people that look like me.
Right.
But now they see women
Yes.
who are out there coaching them,
Yes.
even if they're boys.
Yes.
They see black men.
Yes.
They see men and women that are Latino.
Yes.
They can see something that looks and can give them a sight. You're now living a job you never saw demonstrated to you, and I
Yes.
think that's incredibly powerful. What kind of impact that can have on people moving forward?
Agreed. Agreed. Very much so. And especially in the club and in ODP, there's been those kids that I felt obligated to connect with from the standpoint of, hey, I know exactly what you're going through. I know exactly what you feel like. Keep pushing, keep working, keep grinding. So it's been really great getting the opportunity to make those type of connections, and just from the standpoint of being of looking different or not being like the status quo, if you will, of having that impact on those that are and shaping their thought process or
Wow.
their mentality or their stereotype or whatever you want to call it of someone that doesn't look like them.
Man, that kind of gave me goosebumps when you said that, Jamonn. I mean, I'm thinking of this from a white person's lens, but now you sort of shined a light back to say, you know what, I'm not just impacting that black kid that I want to make that connection with. What are these white kids who maybe haven't seen a black man or woman in a position of authority, in a position of of power? I mean, not that there's a ton of power being a soccer coach, but somebody who's an authority figure that I look up to, that I'm taking instruction from, that I'm taking advice from. The kind of impact that makes on all of those kids shouldn't be underestimated. Man, that's awesome. So we're going to take another little break here. When we come back, I'm really interested to get Jamonn's take on, we've talked about 25 years of you participating in soccer. What's the next 25 look like? In Tennessee, across our country, what's soccer going to look like moving forward? We'll be right back with more TSSA Talks.